Okay, so now we're going to do chapter 16. So we'll go into section 3 and scroll down to chapter 16. Remember, we select the one that says counts towards grade and we'll click on that. And there's a few questions in here. It shows as monopolistic competition, but there's actually, this is a good chapter, particularly to use to review for the exam because it's comparing the different market structures to one another in some of these problems. Okay, so we'll click on the first question. So the first question is just basically trying to get you to think about, types of goods and what would be more competitive and what would be less. So I'll try and just give you some hints here. So headsets, think about it. There's all kinds of manufacturers of headsets. So there's lots and lots and lots of firms out there, and there's lots and lots of people that are wanting to purchase headsets. Smartphones, kind of same thing. We have lots and lots of people wanting to purchase the phones, and you could say the same is true with the cell phone applications. However, even though there's lots and lots of people purchasing them and wanting to purchase them and demanding them, there aren't so many firms as there are in the headset market. And then the cellular telephone service, think about it. There's even less providers in the cell phone telephone service than there are of the types of smartphones that you can buy. So I'm hoping that will help you. Just quick reminder, monopoly means one firm. Oligopoly, for the most part, means 2 to 3 big, huge firms that sell the product. Sometimes it's represented by one big and a whole load of little, but the primary one is 2 to 3 big. Monopolistic competition are lots and lots of firms with each firm having a slightly differentiated product. And then your perfect competition are lots and lots of firms and buyers with no one firm having any influence over price. So we'll continue on to the next question. Okay, so this one is just again looking at, comparison of types of market structures. So this is a great question to review for the test because it's helping you go over the characteristics of each different market. So perfect competition versus monopolistic competition. So as I mentioned, a minute ago, let's go with the first one, sells a product identical to that of its competitors. So remember, in monopolistic competition, they're the firms that are constantly advertising and trying to differ themselves from everybody else. While in perfect competition, they're the kind of industry that they have to take the market price that is determined by the market. So that, and because part of the reason is because they are price takers, and every single product is exactly the same. As far as earning economic profit in the short run, this question says short run. So in both cases, in perfect competition and monopolistic competition, profits can always be driven to zero because entries allowed. But in the short run, profits can always be made. Produces above the minimum of average total cost in the long run. So what you want to think about is who does that. Again, perfect competition is extremely competitive, so they have to keep their costs as low as possible, which is meaning at the minimum point. While monopolistic competition, because they're constantly trying to differ themselves from others, they engage in that behavior of advertising. So their costs are always going to be higher than the perfectly competitive firms. Charges a price that is the same as marginal cost. So you want to think to yourself, okay, where is that the case? So to help with that one, remember, firms always decide to produce where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, and then they price accordingly. So the revenue of the last unit has to equal the cost of the last unit, and then you price accordingly. So of the two market structures here, which one charges a price that's the same as the marginal cost? That's what it's asking. The next one, produces welfare maximizing level of output. Well, that's just saying which is the best or most efficient market structure from an economic perspective, and I think you'll know the answer to that one. And then the last one has marginal revenue less than price. So remember, again, a downward sloping demand curve is the only time that you'll have demand and marginal revenue curve being different, which is the same as saying you have a marginal revenue curve that's less than price. So I think you should be able to answer that. And we'll continue on. Okay, this is a great question too to review, because now you're comparing monopoly and monopolistic competition. So you want to again think about the market structures. So take the time and review this question for your exam as well. So quick reminder, monopoly is one firm, no entry. In the extreme case, there's absolutely no entry. There's the one firm and identical homogeneous product because they're the only firm providing the product. Again, monopolistic competition, that's the one with many, many firms and buyers. They're constantly trying to differ themselves from their competitors. So kind of like the monopolists, each individual firm faces a downward sloping demand curve, but they only have a portion of the market, while in monopoly they get to have the entire market because there is no entry. While in monopolistic competition, people can come and go as they please. So as far as which one faces the entry of new firms and similar products, I think you can answer that. Producing at the minimum of average total cost at the long run. Well, who's the only market structure, or which is the only market structure that produces at the minimum, most efficient, maximizing welfare? It's not going to be either one of these markets. Equates marginal revenue and marginal cost. Remember that saying, that's where the extra revenue of the last unit equals the extra cost of the last unit. And that's where all market structures are going to want to produce and then price accordingly. That statement of has marginal revenue less than price, remember that, as I said previously, that means that the demand curve is downward sloping faced by the market structure and their marginal revenue curve is below it. So in both of these market structures, what's going on? Do they both, the question is saying there, face a downward sloping demand curve? Facing a horizontal demand curve, think about which market structure that only exists in. And then earns economic profit in the long run. That's saying which of these two market structures doesn't allow entry into the market, because that's going to be the one that can continue to make profit in the long run. And that's why firms want to maintain that monopoly status. We'll keep going. Okay, so this question is saying, let's see, what are you told? You're hired as a consultant to a monopolistically competitive firm, and the report tells you or shows you that the price is greater than marginal cost and prices being set equal to average total cost. So I'm just going to give you a couple of reminders here, and I would suggest you look at the monopolistic competitive firm picture. It'll help with this question. But quick reminder, when price equals average total cost and it's monopolistic competition, that actually represents the long run picture of monopolistic competition. So we'll continue on. Okay, let's see. Okay, question 5, you're given this picture, these two different pictures. So you're given picture A or picture B. And what you're asked is, let's see what it says. Sparkle is one firm of many in the market for toothpaste, which is in the long run. So both of these at first might seem like monopoly, but because this question clearly tells you that there's many firms in the market, this is monopolistic competition. And then it asks you, indicate which of the following graphs accurately reflects Sparkle's demand curve, marginal revenue, average toast, and marginal cost curve. So if this is monopolistic competition, and the key here is you're told it's the long run, then we need to find that place where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. So in this case, that would be here. In this case, that would be here. Then we price accordingly, which would mean we go up to the demand curve and then price. And over here, it'd be the same thing. We go up to the demand curve and price. But to know which one we need to be selecting here, since you're told this is long run, and we know it's monopolistic competition because of the description, in monopolistic competition, price has to equal average total cost. And always remember, we don't go to the lowest part of average total cost in monopolistic competition because they are having that extra cost of advertising. So they're always going to be above the minimum. The only one that gets pushed to the minimum with no question in long run will always be perfect competition. And then you can, I think you'll know which picture it is, and then you'll just continue on to a couple other little questions they have there. So we'll keep going. Okay, let's see. So question number 6, you're told, again, you're told they're monopolistic competition in long run. So just like the previous question, the same scenario. And in this case, they've actually given you the picture. So you're asked here to go ahead and, what do we ask? The following graph shows marginal cost curve and average cost for peanut butter, shows demand, marginal revenue. Okay, so it says on the following graph, use the black point to show the profit maximizing output and price for a typical firm in monopolistic competition. So just from that previous question, what do? We find where marginal revenue intersects marginal cost, and then we price accordingly. And you're always going to go up to where demand is. So we come up here up to this point. So we would, remember, we're going to click this and kind of put there. So you'll click. And then it says, and I'm not going to do this part for you, I think you can do it. It says, suddenly peanut butter in Nutville, it's all identical and the market's become perfectly competitive. Okay, so using this picture and being told it's perfect competition, this picture is not quite drawn the way I would like it to see it drawn. But what the key point is in perfect competition, where are we going to go in the long run? Well, we're always going to go where we're at the minimum of the average total cost curve, and that's where the price will be. So I would suggest you go ahead and label that and then answer these questions. I don't think you'll have trouble doing it. This part is just where you're comparing where we were with monopolistic competition versus now imperfect competition. And I believe this is your last question. Probably the easiest one should have been at the beginning, but just a quick reminder here. You're to click on which one of these, if we were making a comparison, if we were in the car business versus forklifts, which one would probably advertise more? So think about this as number of customers. You know, people that purchase a forklift, that's used for construction companies versus cars, which is, you know, the everyday person, you know, that lives particularly in cities or here in Arizona. Most people have cars. So which type of industry, this is asking, is more likely to engage in advertising? And I think you'll be able to answer that. So that would be it for this particular section of homework. I hope that helped, and make sure you study those questions because, as I said, they're great questions to review for the exam.